My name is Constance Beaumont. I am 66 years old and I live in Guelph, Ontario, in a brick semi-detached on Waterloo Avenue that my husband Bernard and I bought in 1989 for $204,000. On September the 28th at 9:17 in the evening, my phone lit up on the kitchen counter. It was a family group message I was never meant to see. My daughter had written it. "Don't tell Mom about the CRA letter. She'll turn it into a whole thing and ruin Thanksgiving." I read it once, then I read it again. Here is what none of them knew at that moment. 19 days earlier, I had already answered the Canada Revenue Agency's questions, every one of them, in writing, under my own name. That evening, I typed 8 words back into that group chat and set my phone face down on the kitchen table. They read those 8 words as anxiety. They were not anxiety. 3 weeks later, in my sister-in-law's dining room in Waterloo, with 7 people standing around her table, they finally understood what I had written. Welcome to Bold Mom Stories, where women who spent their careers keeping other people's numbers straight finally get to read them out loud. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. I should tell you what I did for a living, because everything that follows depends on it. In 1981, I was 22, and I had just graduated from the University of Waterloo with an accounting degree that my father called practical and my mother called safe. I took a job at Hendry and Macpherson on Carden Street in Guelph for $12,000 a year. My job was payroll reconciliations. The same discipline every 2 weeks, every dollar accounted for, every column balanced, every discrepancy explained in writing before you went home. I earned my CA designation in 1985. We call it CPA now, Chartered Professional Accountant, since the profession consolidated in 2013. But the standard was the same then as it is now. You do not sign what you cannot defend. I made partner at 37. I ran the small business file for 22 years. I retired in March of 2020, which was an extraordinary time to be walking away from anything. In 34 years of practice, I turned down 4 clients who asked me to put something untrue on a filing. 3 of them were strangers. I want you to hold on to that number. 4 people asked. I turned down 3. The 4th one is why this story exists, and I will not make you wait long to find out who it was. My house on Waterloo Avenue sits behind a silver maple that Bernard planted the spring we moved in. It is 35 years old now and taller than the roof. The dining room table is pine, nothing remarkable, but it seats 8, and I have hosted every Canadian Thanksgiving on it since 1990, the second Monday in October. Bernard used to say that was the one day a year I let the kitchen belong to someone else, by which he meant I stopped organizing it and started feeding people, which is a different thing entirely. Bernard died on February 14, 2019. He was 68. We had been married 41 years. I hosted Thanksgiving that October anyway. 6 people, everyone careful with each other, nobody saying the chair at the end of the table was empty, because it visibly was. In 2022, the dinner moved to my daughter's house in Hamilton. Nobody voted. Nobody called. The address in the group text was hers, and that was that. I drove the 45 minutes, brought my mother's butternut squash soup, and sat where I was told. But every October after that, on the Saturday before the long weekend, I set my dining room table the way I always had. 8 places. The good china Bernard's mother had left us. Cloth napkins pressed the way she taught me. I told myself I was keeping the muscle memory. I was not. The group chat is called Beaumont Fam. My son started it in 2021 when we were trying to coordinate selling Bernard's tools from the garage. I was in it from the beginning, until August of 2023 when my sister-in-law quietly moved me to a smaller thread she described as less cluttered. She meant that she found my responses about logistics exhausting. I am the only person in this family old enough to qualify as older folks, so that was a head count of 1. I did not ask to be put back. A woman my age learns not to knock on a door that has been latched from the other side. I want that on the record. Then my granddaughter added me back in March of 2024. She is 17. She had taken a photograph of a woodpecker in my backyard, and she wanted to share it with everybody, and adding me was faster than forwarding it separately. She never removed me. No one noticed. I muted it in April. That is the only reason I am not going to pretend I was reading along all year. I was not. On September the 28th, it buzzed, and I happened to look. Don't tell Mom about the CRA letter. She'll turn it into a whole thing and ruin Thanksgiving. Below it, within 5 minutes, 3 thumbs up. I knew exactly whose they were, because I have known those 3 people most of their lives. Let me introduce everyone, because you will need the map. My daughter is 43. She manages a physiotherapy clinic in Hamilton, and she is very good at it. Her husband is 46. He runs a residential renovation company, kitchens and bathrooms mostly, the occasional addition. They have been married for 12 years, and he has never once, in 12 years, used my first name. He calls me variations of hey, or a slight upward nod from across a room. Hamilton is 45 kilometers from my driveway, less than an hour if the 403 behaves itself. My son is 40. He works in municipal planning for the city of Kingston. His wife is 38 and has never done a single unkind thing to me. Kingston is 260 kilometers east, about 2.5 hours. My granddaughter is 17. My grandson is 14, both my son's children. My sister-in-law, Bernard's younger sister, is 61. She lives in Waterloo, 28 kilometers west of me. She organizes everything in this family now. She does it with warmth, and she means well, and she has never once, in 30 years, asked me whether I wanted her to. At every family gathering for several years running, someone would say some version of the same thing about me. My sister-in-law's version was the most polished. She would observe the way I was arranging the serving dishes, and she would say, with genuine affection, "You do keep a tidy ship, Constance." She said it fondly. That was what made it land. Here is what will not make sense yet. My son-in-law's renovation company, registered with the province, HST number, the whole operation, listed its business address as 44 Waterloo Avenue, Guelph, my address, and my name was on the registration as a business consultant since 2017. It started on a Tuesday evening in November of that year. My son-in-law drove up from Hamilton alone. My daughter was not with him, which was the first signal I did not read correctly. He sat at my kitchen table with a folder, and he was very easy about it, the way he is easy about most things. He said the company was growing. He needed a proper registered address for municipal licensing, and he said mine was convenient and quiet. He did not ask whether it was appropriate. He made a statement and waited to see if I would correct him. Then he said the second part. He said the city of Hamilton gave preferential weighting in renovation permit reviews to companies with a designated professional consultant on file. He said my CPA designation, even retired, would give the bids a different look. He slid a single page across the table. One signature line. I want to be fair to him, because I have had 7 years to think about this. He does not believe he was asking me to do anything wrong. He believes a designation is something a person earns, and that using it to help family is simply what credentials are for. That logic is bent, but it has an internal consistency, and he is not a cartoon. I looked at the paper. I looked at the folder he had come with. Then I thought about a morning in February of 2012, my son's first year in Kingston, when he called me at 7 in the morning, unable to make his rent, because the used car he had bought had thrown a rod, and the repair cost was more than the car. I transferred $800. He said, "Thank you." Then, 6 months later at Christmas dinner, he said something in front of Bernard that has lived in this family ever since. He said, at the table, in front of his sister, "Mom would rather do things by the book than just help." Nobody argued with him, including me. So here is the honest part. When my son-in-law slid that paper across the table in 2017, I did not say yes because I was afraid of being called unhelpful. That is not my weakness. I have been called worse by people who mattered more. I said yes because I told myself I understood the exposure better than anyone else at that table, that the designation was inactive, and therefore the risk was marginal, and that I could monitor it. That is arrogance wearing a cardigan. An inactive credential is still your name on a document. And your name on a document is a promise to a stranger who will make decisions based on what you have sworn. I should tell you my daughter's version of this history because it matters. March of 2019, 3 weeks after Bernard's funeral. She called me and she was crying, the spent kind of crying that comes after the harder kind is done. She said their mortgage renewal had come in and the rate was bad because of an old credit issue from her husband's business. She did not know how to get through the next 5 years. I told her she could list me as a co-applicant on the renewal. She said, "Are you sure?" And I said yes, and we never discussed it again. She has never once in 7 years referred to that conversation. What she does remember is the following spring, when I mentioned, once, gently, that carrying both her mortgage and my own property on my credit file was beginning to affect what I could borrow for my rental property on Stone Road. She heard that as a complaint. She has filed it as a complaint ever since. My sister-in-law's version is shorter, and it is the one that actually cut me. October of 2020, she was on her condo board, and they were updating their reserve fund study. She asked me, at my own kitchen table, whether I could look it over and sign off on it with my CPA designation. I said I could not. I said I was retired, and my errors and omissions coverage had lapsed, and signing anything professional, without proper coverage, was something I was not willing to do. She said she understood. She did not understand. 4 months later, I was in the frozen food aisle at the Real Canadian Superstore when a woman I vaguely recognized from the neighborhood told me my sister-in-law had described me at a book club as the most difficult person to ask for a simple favor. She told me this thinking it was funny. I thought about that word, difficult, all the way home. I understand now it had been in circulation longer than I knew. I want to tell you that I tried to end this the straightforward way first. In the spring of 2024, I had the accountant who bought my practice pull together a full review of every place my name appeared that it should not have. The business registration, the mortgage co-ex application, a contractor license renewal my son-in-law had filed using my address as the principal place of business. I put it in a folder. I drove to Hamilton on a Sunday in late April, and I sat at my daughter's kitchen table, and I set the folder down between the coffee mugs. My son-in-law laughed, not meanly. He laughed the way a person laughs when they believe the conversation has been had before and the outcome is already settled. He said, "Constance, it's administrative. Nobody is looking into this." My daughter asked whether I wanted to stay for lunch. I drove home on the 403 with the folder on the passenger seat. June came and went. That part is mine. I want it on the record before we go any further. On August the 15th, 2024, at 10:30 in the morning, a letter came through my mail slot from the Canada Revenue Agency. I date stamp incoming mail the way I date stamped files at the firm for 34 years. Habit is a slow thing to unlearn, and I have not tried. The stamp read August 15th. The return address was the CRA's Trust Accounts Division. The letter was addressed to me personally. It referenced my son-in-law's business registration. It asked 14 questions about the nature of my consultancy, whether I had received remuneration, and whether 44 Waterloo Avenue was in fact the principal operating address of the business. I have written letters like this one. I have sat across from frightened clients and explained what this kind of letter means. I know what it means when the CRA uses the phrase clarification required. It means they already have an answer and they want to see if you will match it. I put the pen down. I walked out to the front step in my socks. The only vehicle in front of my house was my own 2017 Civic. On September the 9th, I answered all 14 questions. I answered them plainly, without adjectives or explanations. If a form gives you a line, you use the line and nothing else. Question 7 asked me to describe my professional role in the business. I wrote, "I have no professional role in this business. My name and designation were added to the registration in 2017 at my son-in-law's request. I did not provide services. I should not have agreed to be listed. Question 11 asked whether the business conducted its principal operations from my Guelph address. I wrote, "No, the business operates from Hamilton. I do not know the specific address of their premises." I drove to a notary on Gordon Street, had it witnessed and sealed, and then drove to the post office on Woolwich Street. Certified mail with return receipt requested, $11.40. I also walked into the office of the accountant who had purchased my practice and gave her a written instruction to remove my name from the business registration with the province. She date-stamped the instruction and gave me a copy. I signed it in front of her. Then I called my daughter. She did not pick up. I called again on September the 13th. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I left a message 20 seconds long. I said, "There are letters coming from CRA that reference the business. Call me before you open them and I will walk you through it." She did not call back. I want to be precise about that because someone, later in a different room, suggested I had been building towards something. 2 calls. 4 days apart, that is what I made. It is not nothing, and it is not much. I have made my peace with both facts. The return receipt came back on Tuesday, September the 17th, the small green card with a CRA mailroom employee's signature and a Sudbury date stamp. I put it in a tin I keep on the kitchen windowsill. Green tin, hinged lid, rosemary sprigs pressed into the pattern on the lid. Bernard gave it to me the last Christmas before he got sick. The recipe cards it was meant for are in a binder now. The tin holds other things. That made 4 cards in the tin. I need you to remember the tin. September the 28th. I was sorting recycling at 9 in the evening. My phone lit up on the counter. "Beaumont fam, my daughter. Don't tell Mum about the CRA letter. She'll turn it into a whole thing and ruin Thanksgiving." Then, 40 seconds later from the same thread, "My sister-in-law. Can someone handle the head count without her?" That second message is the one that took the air out of me. And I want to explain why. Because people who have heard this story since have always quoted the first line back to me as though it was the worst of it. The first line is a feeling. People have feelings about their mothers. I have had a few myself. The second line is logistics. The second line means the decision was already made and someone was being asked to absorb the subtraction. You do not ask someone to redo the head count unless the removal is final. I read both messages the way I would read a set of financial statements, looking for what was stated, what was implied, and what was missing. What was missing was any sign that anyone expected the situation to be difficult. They were not worried about me. They were protecting their Thanksgiving from a conversation. I know whose 3 thumbs those were. I have known those people their whole lives. I typed my reply at 9:41. I wrote 2 versions. The first one had the word hurt in it, which told me everything I needed to know about how useful it was going to be, and I deleted it. The second one started with a Bible verse, which tells you exactly how far gone I was, and I deleted that too. Then I sat at my kitchen table and thought about what was actually true at 9:40 in the evening on the 28th of September. Here is what I sent. 8 words. No punctuation at the end because I did not finish the sentence and I was not going to pretend I had. My name came off that file September 9th. Every word of it was true. 11 messages came back in under 5 minutes. My son-in-law, here we go. My sister-in-law, Constance, no one was trying to hide anything. My daughter, this is exactly what I mean. My son sent a single question mark. Someone sent a reaction I did not recognize. Not one of them asked what I meant by the file. Not one of them asked what had happened on September 9th. Every single one of them read 8 words as a mood. It was not a mood, it was a filing. If you have ever sent a short truce sentence that nobody bothered to read carefully, you know exactly how that feels. Tell me in the comments what your 8 words would have been. And subscribe, because the part I have not told you yet is the part with the dates in it. The next several days were completely ordinary, and I think that is worth a minute of your time. Tuesday, I went to Aquafit at the Sleeman Center, which I have done every Tuesday since 2021 because my knees have opinions now that I have to negotiate with. Wednesday, I had my hair set. Thursday, I made a pot of chowder that was going to last 4 days. I also confirmed with the accountant who had bought my practice that the provincial registration change had been processed. She said it had. She said the CRA file was moving, and I should expect further correspondence in the coming weeks. I did not send another message to that group chat. I have not sent one since. I want to say something that took me a long time to be able to say out loud. I was not plotting. There was nothing left to plot. Everything I was going to do, I had already done on a Monday in September for $11.40. From the 28th of September forward, I was a bystander to my own paperwork. I am 66 years old. I have a system. The system does not care who is upset with me, and the system does not speed up because somebody's feelings got involved. So I made chowder. I went to Aquafit. I stamped a hydro bill and a flyer from a chiropractor I have never visited. I went to bed at 10 o'clock. Canadian Thanksgiving that year was October the 14th. I did not receive an invitation to Hamilton. I did not mention it and I did not ask. I cooked a small chicken, roasted potatoes, the butternut squash soup, and a butter tart because I am from Ontario and butter tarts are not negotiable. I ate at my pine table, no extra places set, no good china brought out from the cabinet. I could see the hall closet from where I sat. The folded tablecloths on the second shelf. The set of cloth napkins I had pressed the week before out of habit. I did not take them out. That was the first Canadian Thanksgiving since 1990. I had not set extra places at that table. I sat with that fact for a while. Around 2 in the afternoon, I became convinced my phone might be broken because it had not made a sound in several hours. So I called the automated line on the back of my bank card and listened to the menu all the way through just to confirm the device was working. It was working. I called my friend Marguerite in Fergus, and we talked for an hour about her daughter's new apartment and a book she had given up on halfway through, and whether the fall colors were worth driving up to Elora for. It was the best conversation I had all week. I was not lonely that afternoon. I want to be honest about that, because loneliness would have been easier to explain. I was something else entirely. I was done. The letters arrived in October and November, as these things do. CRA notified my son-in-law that his business filings for the period 2017 through 2024 were under review following the amended registration. The preliminary reassessment was for $18,400 in disallowed deductions, plus accrued interest. A formal notice of assessment would follow once the review concluded. My daughter received a separate review notice about Ontario Trillium benefit claims filed from my Guelph address during years she had not lived here. The potential repayment was $3,200 plus a small penalty. My son-in-law came to my door the following Saturday morning. He sat in the entryway because I did not invite him further than that. He said CRA was asking questions he did not understand. He said all I had to do was call them and confirm I had been providing informal advisory support to the business on a part-time basis. He said part-time 3 separate times, the way a person repeats a phrase when they are testing whether it will hold weight. I stood near the coat closet with my hands folded. I did not raise my voice. I did not mention the group message. I did not mention September the 9th. I said one sentence. I am not going to tell the Canada Revenue Agency something that is not true. He waited for more. There was no more. I opened the door for him, which in my mother's house was the polite way of ending a conversation. He went out onto the step and turned around. He said, "You are blowing up this family over a form." He was wrong about exactly one word in that sentence. He was wrong about who was holding the form. I need to stop here and tell you something that I have not told anyone in this family, And I am telling it now because the people who heard this story later got it wrong, and getting it wrong is how you misunderstand what it is actually about. In November, the accountant who had bought my practice identified, while reviewing the documents I had submitted to CRA, that I had been misclassifying my Stone Road rental property on my own tax returns for 3 years. I had listed it in a way that allowed me to apply the principal residence rules in a manner that was not strictly accurate. I had not thought of it as dishonest at the time. I had thought of it as interpretation. Those are not the same thing, and I knew the difference, and I had chosen the easier one. I corrected my own returns on November the 12th and paid the adjustment myself. $1,460 plus interest. I did not use it as a bargaining chip at the gathering in December. I did not bring it up when my daughter accused me of building a case. I am bringing it up now because I sat at my kitchen table in 2017 and signed something I could not honestly defend, and so did my son-in-law, and the fact that his error was larger than mine does not make mine disappear. I have said since the beginning that I turned down 3 strangers. I did not turn down the 4th. My sister-in-law called on November the 20th. It was the first time she had called me, not texted, called, in over a year. She started with concern. She said the family was unsettled. She said my daughter was not sleeping. Then she got to what she had actually called about. She defended the group message. She said nobody meant anything by it. She said it was just a guest list. Then she said the next part in the same easy voice she uses for everything. She said, I probably started the whole difficult thing, to be honest. Years ago. You know how these things go. I said, tell me what year. She paused. She said, oh, Constance. The word difficult had been in this family since 2013. She had introduced it at a book club after I had declined to sign the Condo Reserve Fund study. 11 years before my daughter typed it into the group chat. My daughter did not write it in a moment of frustration. She finally just wrote it. My son called on a Tuesday evening in late November. He did not raise his voice. He has never raised his voice at me in his life, which is its own kind of problem, because silence and quiet are not the same thing either. He asked what a notice of reassessment meant in practical terms. I explained it. I told him he should get his own accountant, and I offered to give him 2 names in Kingston who would treat him decently. There was a long pause. I could hear his dryer going in the background. The particular thump a zipper makes against the drum. He said, I didn't know he had your designation on the registration. I thought it was just the address. And I believed him. I want that on the record, too. He said, I don't know how to explain this to the kids. I stood in my kitchen with the phone against my ear, and I came very close to saying something I would not have been able to take back, because he was not asking me to be brave with him. He has never asked that. He was asking me to be useful. So I said, you tell them what happened and then you answer their questions. That is all either of us can do. He was quiet for a moment longer. Then, right before he hung up, in a voice that had flattened out again, you could have just said no in 2017. He was not wrong. That was the last time one of my children called me before December. My sister-in-law hosted her Christmas open house on the 21st. She called on December the 4th to invite me, and I said yes. I knew exactly why she was calling. I said yes anyway. 7 people in her Waterloo dining room. My daughter, my son-in-law, my son and his wife, my sister-in-law, and me. My granddaughter had exams. My grandson was at a hockey tournament in Barrie. My son-in-law had also brought someone. A man I did not recognize until I was introduced to him as the accountant who had been advising the business on the CRA matter. He had driven from Hamilton. He was holding a paper plate with crackers and a square of cheddar, and he had the look of a man who had been told this was a social occasion and was only now revising that understanding. I brought a tin of shortbread and a manila accordion folder. I set the shortbread on the counter and the folder on the chair beside the bookcase, and I did not open it. I talked to my daughter-in-law about the fall drive through Elora and whether Fergus was worth stopping in on the way back. She said she had never been. I said she should go in the spring when the Grand River is high. My son-in-law waited until the other accountant had his coat off. Then he said, loud enough for the far end of the room, "Tell her," he said to the accountant. "Tell her she can call them and clarify the nature of the work." The accountant said, carefully, that the window for that type of amendment had limitations given the timeline of the file. My son-in-law turned to me. "One call," he said, "that is all." My daughter came and stood at his shoulder. I said, "No." He said, "It's just paperwork." I said, "That is what I told myself in 2017. His face did the thing a face does when a sentence you said in your mother-in-law's kitchen 6 years ago is read back to you in front of your accountant. My daughter said what she said not to me but to the accountant, in a voice designed to make the room agree. She has been building a case against this family since September. The room considered this. I watched it being considered. It is a good sentence. It explains everything, and it costs nothing. I picked up the folder from the chair. I set 3 things on my sister-in-law's dining room table, side by side. The CRA letter from August the 15th, 2024, with my date stamp visible in the upper corner. My notarized response, 2 seals, the notary's handwritten date in the margin, September 9th, 2024. The green certified mail receipt, signed by a CRA mailroom employee, stamped received September the 12th, 2024. Then I set my phone on top of all 3, screen up, open to the Beaumont fam chat. September 28th, 2024, 9:17 p.m. The other accountant leaned over and looked at the notarized document. Nobody asked him to. He straightened up and said to the room, "Not to me. That date is in the provincial registry. The change was filed September 9th. I said 2 words. 19 days. Then I read the group message out loud in the same voice I would use to read a line from a financial statement. All of it. My daughter's line and my sister-in-law's line. My granddaughter had put me back in that chat in March. The date on the message was the same evening I had been in my kitchen, making chowder, waiting for a phone call that did not come. The room was quiet. My daughter started crying, and I want to be careful here because she is my daughter, and the crying was real. She did not apologize, she said, "So you were sitting on this at Thanksgiving, and you said nothing." I said, "I was not at your table at Thanksgiving." She had no answer for that, so she went where she always goes. She said, "You have always chosen the rules over your own family." It was her brother's sentence first. He said it in Bernard's kitchen, in 2012, in front of Bernard, in front of his sister. Hearing it come out of her mouth told me something I had suspected for a long time. They have been telling each other that versions since before my grandchildren were born. The sentence is now 13 years old, and it fits in her mouth like something she grew up speaking. My sister-in-law moved in to smooth it, which is her office in this family. She said nobody meant anything. She said family is more important. I did not answer her. There is nothing to say to a woman who has decided the word she issued in 2013 was weather. I turned to my daughter-in-law and asked her one practical question. I asked whether she had spoken with an accountant of her own about what would arrive from CRA in Kingston. She said quietly, yes. She had called someone on the 15th of November. I said, good. My son-in-law picked up the notarized document from the table. He held it for a moment. He set it back down carefully because there is a notary seal on it, and even a man who is very angry knows what a notary seal means. He said, I had betrayed this family. He said it twice. He said he would tell everyone he knew what I had done. I set my glass down on the counter. I said 3 things, and then I stopped talking entirely. I said, the business registration is corrected. The assessment will arrive in January. I said, I will not call anyone and say something that is not true. I said, and I am not going to argue with you in my sister-in-law's dining room. I got my coat from the pile on the bed in the back room. I said good night to my sister-in-law, and I meant it, and I think that surprised us both. I walked out at 8:40. I drove 6 kilometers home in the dark because it was -12, and I am 66 years old, and I earned the right to drive 6 kilometers. I made a cup of tea I did not drink. I went to bed at my normal time, which I had not expected to be possible. Between 9 that night and 7, the next morning, I received 41 missed calls and 97 text messages. I counted them the next morning at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, and I wrote the tally on the back of an envelope, because that is what I have always done with numbers I intend to remember. 11 calls from my son-in-law, 14 from my daughter, 9 from my sister-in-law, 7 from my son. In 7 years of carrying their business address, their credential listing, their mortgage co-application, not one of those people had called me twice in a day to ask how I was. I answered exactly one call on Sunday morning. My daughter-in-law's. Here is what the winter cost, including what it cost me. On January the 8th, I went to a Service Ontario office on Stone Road with a folder and a pen and signed a statutory declaration confirming the removal of my name from every document I had identified. I paid the filing fees myself. I did not ask for $1 in return. Only my daughter-in-law said thank you. The formal notice of assessment arrived for my son-in-law in January, $18,400 in disallowed deductions plus interest. He is working through it with his accountant. My daughter received her Ontario Trillium benefit repayment notice in February, $3,240. She had 60 days to respond. I had already paid my own correction in November, $1,460 plus interest. For the 3 years, I had classified the Stone Road property incorrectly. I paid it before December, before the gathering, before any of this was in a room together. I paid it because it was what I owed, and I do not get a different standard because my error was smaller than someone else's. My son-in-law sent me a text in February, 6 words, "You made this so much worse." I did not reply. He is welcome to think that. His accountant's quarterly invoice disagrees with him and will keep disagreeing as long as the reassessment stands. In March, my daughter-in-law and my grandchildren came to Guelph for the afternoon. I made chowder. My granddaughter talked for 40 minutes about a documentary on migratory birds. My grandson ate 3 bowls and asked me what a notary was. I told him it was a person who watches you sign something and writes down that they saw it, so there is a record that the signature belongs to you. He said, "That's a lot of work for a signature." I said, "That is the point of it." In April, my sister-in-law phoned to ask whether I would put together 2 trays of squares for a bridal shower she was hosting in May. She asked in the easy way she asks everything, as if December had been weather that had simply passed. I said I would bring 2 trays, and she should send me the head count by Friday. She brought the platters back the following week, washed and stacked. There was a handwritten note folded under the top one that said thank you. Her handwriting is the same as it has always been, small and slanted and very sure of itself. My daughter has not called. I keep the ringer on. The rosemary tin on the kitchen windowsill has 4 green receipts in it now. In March, I put Bernard's last birthday card in there too, the one from October before he died. It has his handwriting on the inside. I do not open the tin to read it. I open it to know it is there. I still date stamp incoming mail every morning. Most of it is grocery flyers and hydro notices and the parish bulletin from St. George's. Last month I stamped the inside of my granddaughter's birthday card because I had missed the date by 2 days and I wanted her to know I had thought of it. First time in 34 years that stamp marked a good day instead of a document. So here is the thing, and it is the only reason I am telling this story to strangers. For 7 years, I put my name on things I could not honestly defend. I told myself it was love. I told myself the exposure was manageable. I told myself the rules mattered less than the people. Every one of those sentences was a lie I had agreed to store for someone else. On the day I stopped storing it, they called me difficult. They called me cold. They said I had chosen the rules over the people who needed me. Difficult is the word people reach for when a woman they have counted on stops agreeing to sign. Your name on a document is not a gesture. It is a promise to a stranger who will make real decisions based on what you have sworn. And if you would not say it plainly to that stranger's face, you are not being generous to the people you are signing for. You are being afraid. And they will spend years calling that fear love because it costs them so much less. I don't sign what I can't swear to. It took me 7 years and $11.40 to mean it again. If this made you want to read your own paperwork tonight, go read it. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment, hit subscribe, and I will see you next time.